Kate Williams, Mrs. Williams, is a city council representative, former city council president in the city of Orange.
That's no problem.
All right.
So I work for you. You're from here, you live here.
That's no problem. And
Okay, now, take notes, see what I said, I work for him. We're gonna talk about that.
She goes to POP meetings, she's a member of POP, which is the People's Organization for Progress. She is at rallies and things, always engaged in the community. That's what I've always appreciated about her, is that she doesn't just, and so not just in the city of Orange, but in our community broadly speaking, right? And so that some people are, you only see them in their own city, and they don't go to other things and participate unless it's some big event, but I've seen her many times in other small events or medium-sized events in other places, and I think that's a powerful thing, that when you have somebody who is an elected official who is concerned about the welfare of the community at large, and it makes a very big different impact, especially when you talk about how they do what they do in their own community, right? Because then their own community perspective is contextualized by everything that's going on around them. Just because there's a border on Orange and East Orange and West Orange, it really is no border, right? It's like Trump's wall, right? So the reality of it is that there's no border there. The flow of people is continuous, and we have to think of it that way, of the continuity therein. So let's give her a round of applause. And we'll be glad to take any questions, think about this. How many terms have you been in office?
So I'll give a little bit,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm gonna just pick up where you left off. Now, how many people here from Orange? Just one.
Good, sorry, same thing.
Exactly. So, what Dr. Fine just said about, he gave the analogy of Trump's wall. And I was just listening to somebody that grew up in Mexico, and he said, just think about it. I woke up and I went to bed and I was an American citizen. And then when they had changed the lines and everything, I woke up and then I was an American citizen. It literally happened like that. So these things that are big, and it would seem, and Orange was Newark at one point. So all of that was Newark. Yeah, all Oranges was the city of Newark. So one community, a lot of the same issues. So no, there's no line and everything. There's nothing that, we have a lot of the terms now, intersectionality, and, you said parallel. But I'm in my third term. I first got elected in 2008. And just to let you know, 2008, when I got elected, I won by 7 votes.
Wow.
Yes, the power of the vote. Taught me a lesson that do the work. So, that was a very, But in 2012 and 2016, I was the highest vote getter thereafter, because I had a visual of how important, or how this vote is serious. We've even had a vote in Orange years ago where somebody lost by 1 vote. So your vote does have carried a lot of, we always say, what does my vote mean? It's not going to change. But everywhere it counts, but especially locally, And I say that because you can come knock on my door, you see me sitting on my porch, you have an issue. So as the term goes, all politics are local. And in fact, my campaign slogan for 2016 was "Unbought and Unbossed." And Shirley Chisholm, as a woman who is in elected office, she is somebody that you would want to follow, study, listen to, because of course, if you see today, if you didn't know, we had to put blinders on many of these issues that she's talking about now. Quite frankly, we'd be like, oh, she was talking about, who's that? Who's she running for? So that's basically, how I want to just let you know something about me. But yeah, class of 1985, born and raised in Orange, love Orange, bleed Orange, and here to serve. To start with, any questions?
What inspired you to get into politics?
What inspired me? So, I come out of labor. I was a shop steward. I used to work at Superior Court right here across the street. And went to my shop steward one time and asked them, you know, in terms of representation. And when I saw how they represented me, oh, okay, so how do I be a shop steward? Because if I'm paying you dues, you're not representing me the way I should be represented. I need to learn how to do this and represent myself and represent people. And then that just opened the door in labor. AFL-CIO has a fee that you pay to coach on, and it's for to train you to be active in elections, whether you're going to run or help people run. And as I became more educated, same situation happened in Orange. There was a concern about representation or or lack thereof, and you know, people weren't doing what I felt they should be doing. You know, I decided to become a part of the solution. Like, so it came out of something personal, and to just say, I don't want anybody else to have to go through what I went through, and let me step up so I can be changed that I want to see. And I know that sounds, you know, kind of slogan is what it is.
Anybody else questions?
I do have one. Could you explain a little about like your first term, like what was your strategy and what do you think stood out of the other who you were competing with?
So, bless you. My strategy, and so just thinking about my campaign slogan in 2008 was effective and efficient leadership. And my strategy, if anything, was listening and responding to the needs of what I was hearing. So you know, you're out there, you're knocking, you're talking door to door, and somebody's, the street is not getting done, this is not getting done, so you kind of form around that. And you know, while I was interested in my young people, I came out of Orange at a time where Orange is broken up into 4 wards, north, south, east, and west. Something to do every day. We had a lot of activities. There was a lot of family, community engagement. It's really a family town, and now I'm seeing a lot of that has gone away. So that was one of my cores. Like, how do I restore what I used to see? When I was growing up, again, born in 1967, we didn't leave Orange for anything. You could do my grocery shopping there. I could shop on Main Street. The schools was there. I don't even think I've ever purchased meat out of a supermarket until I was like 20 years old, because you had butchers and things of that. Very self-sufficient. You know, we were a town that was broken up, different ethnicity, Irish, African American, Italian, Anglo-Saxon, but it was functional. And Jewish people pretty much ran Main Street in terms of business, but you lived there, you worked there, and you thrived there. And to see that diminish, you know, no supermarket, I mean, because the mall had a great impact on things of that, and one thing left and same thing, you know, to be able to, and to get to my time when I ran in 2008, the people who lived there were asking for those things. So it was not a far-fetched for me, because I didn't have to go visualize it. I grew up like that. So how do we get supermarkets? How do we do this? And you know, and I think in 2008, somebody asked that, you know, how do we bring supermarkets and stuff back in our town? And I think one of my greatest responses is, well, I don't have to do a lot of research. I just need to go pull up the file cabinet and see what was there, what caused it to leave, and let's get back to the basics. So I think, but just being responsive, you know, if you sit down and just hearing what you need at your kitchen table, I choose to be very responsive to that immediately.
This is a film class.
Yeah.
Film class. And then we have Brother Kaseka Wade, and he runs the refile, and they have a community center here in Newark.
I think so,
9th and 13th.
Y'all do something with honey or something?
Yeah, they got lots of.
Have you been down, young people been down to the refile? Oh my gosh, you're talking about the best library source. The books, and you have to go down on 9th and visit refile organization. I'm a book person, I love reading. Some of the best reading is right here. But ask questions, because so we're in 2020, everybody's at voting age. So who's the first person that you guys voted for president?
I haven't been.
couldn't vote, I was at work at the time.
Okay, you were at work, you weren't old enough.
I voted Jeff Stout.
That was your first presidential? Okay.
I was old enough yet.
Oh,
Was the presidential election.
so this will be your first presidential 2020? Okay. You were voting?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Your first president you voted for? You can't vote? Okay.
I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
Let's move to a voting time. Let's start the registry.
Okay. So the next question is, everybody here registered to vote?
Yeah.
Everybody registered to vote. So I need you, so just your question, I didn't have time, I didn't do anything, absentee ballot, you're right here across the street from Essex County Clerk, Chris Durkin. And I say that because life happens and you're in school, so if you're going to be in a position that you don't know when these situations come, I encourage you to walk across the street next week and fill out absentee ballot, so that ballot can come right to your house. Because again, I won in my first race by 7 votes, so it's really important. And don't take it lightly because especially local politics affect you. And one of the things that stands out in 2008, this is a time where sagging jeans was, whatever, and my colleagues wanted to do legislation if a young person was walking down the street in sagging jeans, they would get a ticket. But not realizing I come out of the court system, and young people cannot, they don't generally do young people under 18 in the municipal court. It's dealt with right down here. So the first interaction a young person, as a result of that, had the legislation going through, dealing with the judicial system would be because of fashion, So I went, down the block like, y'all get to the council meeting, y'all gonna be getting tickets for, sagging jeans. And I didn't think, because anytime I've asked a young person, that doesn't look presentable, can you pull your pants up? Like, oh, I'm sorry, Mom, blah, blah. There was never ever any pushback from it. So number one, have we even gone out to the corners or whatever to talk to people and to see, how they feel about this fashion statement or not. And then, so the young people came in and began to talk, and the bill and the legislation didn't pass, but we write local law. So just imagine, and I get it that we're doing it maybe from a motherly, fatherly standpoint of, just wanting you to look nice, put a belt on and everything, but we're putting you through a judicial system, giving police the opportunity to come tell you how to dress. And they might, while the person writing the law may be doing it out of love, the person who's going to issue the ticket is another way for them to, pin you up and everything. So those things are really, really important. What time do you put your garbage out? Again, if I'm writing the law to tell you to put your garbage out this time, if you don't, and you start getting tickets and things like that, and I didn't even factor in that, well, you work at a time that if you put your garbage out this time because of your work schedule, and just trying, we're in Essex County, New Jersey's highest tax state. Now I'm taxing another way for tickets, and I'm not engaging with you. That's really important. So local law, so you get engaged, and at the point, and it may not be as an elected official, we have boards, zoning, planning, and sometimes you're walking down the street, why they got all these stores in here? Why, this is this way, and then you ask somebody to sit on the board, and you don't sit on the board. You're not being a part of the solution. So whatever it is, however you can help. And sometimes it's just, Councilwoman, can I come in and sit, can we just sit down and film the council meeting, and then so we can come back and have a discussion of what we observed. That's your way of educating. I just seen a piece that Vice had done about Bloomfield, when they were locking young black men up. And I seen that piece, and it was done through a study at Seton Hall. There's so many ways. Our Lieutenant Governor, Oliver, she had a saying, each one reach one, and find your place and do it, and each one reach one. And that's what I'm saying, whatever it is that you can do, as your shirt says, Dreamville, find that place and do it. And as I think Dr. King, one of his speeches said, if you're going to be a custodian, I think it was, or switch streets, we could do it to the best. because we all have a place in connecting, we all make this world a better place, and we have to get involved. And this right here, and I like Amiri Baraka. He said, look, quite frankly, none of y'all gonna win. So none of y'all gonna win. Why can't we just throw our energy behind, Shirley Chisholm, and let's just see where this goes. But this whole thing of, we have a term in labor, don't negotiate against yourself. If we're already counting our self-power, it's already lost. So, let's do it and do it well. And the tactics are the same, because guess what? That same thought process is the same thing that kept Hillary out. There's no way, if you didn't have a picture of Hillary and Trump or anything else, but you were just putting the facts on the table, this person has this person has that, and you were able to pick the candidate based on the facts and not even seeing the person, it might have been a different situation. But we got really emotional, and we got to start playing chess, is what, and really, because for me, looking through this, from what happened in 2008, 2012 to where we are now, it's just like opposite, just totally opposite. I don't know how you feel, you're younger, but how do you feel about the president that we had now to the president we have now? Do y'all see any differences? Do you feel any way about it?
As soon as Trump was elected, a lot more hate was brought to light. Then, because people who, if you're shouting out things that are full of hate, it's just going to bring out the people who've been hiding that hate all that time, and then like, oh, he's saying it, that means I'm going to say it, and that's what's going to start this whole thing. More people are beating up black people and shooting them. More. And you're thinking blacks and Hispanics are more evil or do bad things just because one person says it, oh, it must be true. Even though he's like the worst type of person to live. He has mocked disabled people, women, and yet he's still elected. And like, how can you elect someone like that?
And very condescending. It's like, did y'all see the movie The Hate You Give?
I didn't see it, but I
How many does it show of hands? One. Okay. So if I was a professor, just because that, that storyline, especially because you're in film, that storyline, and they hate you give, it's serious. And some people don't have the strength to think or to do for themselves or to push their ideas, so they do take on other people's ideas and think it's okay. But you had issue with a professor from Harvard, who was climbing through the window, Gates, climbing through the window, and then the whole, and how angry Professor Gates was, and rightfully so. But you had President Obama say, okay, let's go get some beers and let's have a conversation about it. Not, there were two people there was a bad person outside the window and a bad person inside the window. It was like, come on, because sometimes, again, acting on emotions, you just do that right there, and you don't begin to learn how much you have in common. And that brokering that meeting turned out a whole different way, and they were able to talk to one another. And that's not where we're going right now. Do y'all ever think about how we're looked at on a global front right now because of the leadership we have?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Because I noticed this while he was running for the presidency, other countries were protesting against him. And while, if a whole country, all right, I get it, like people in the country are protesting, but other countries are protesting, that's saying a big thing. But people are too blind, or they just simply either don't want a woman in power. Things that happened in the past, like people were trying to really think from the 80s that she has said. People change. Some people don't change, some people do change. People don't seem to look at that. They just, oh, it's what they said 50 years ago, I have to believe that now. Things change over time. But on a global, like people, to me, what I've seen, he's a laughing stock. And he's making things worse. But people who are so like, oh, he's the best man in the world, he's not. He's not in.
Do you really think they think he's the best man? Or do they think that?
Judging that I have family who have voted for him and they post his stuff constantly. As much as I love my uncle, I hate the things that he shares. I almost got to a heated argument with him. He was blaming Obama for like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And I'm like, Black Lives Matter started because a kid got shot for no reason. But then he tried to say that it was the kid's fault. And then it was about to get a heated argument. Mom was like, no, Mom, just stop because it's going to get bad. And as much as I love them, people are very ignorant and they don't look at other things.
And the stranger dynamics of the conversation, because in fact, that was one of the great things that President Obama did do. He sent young people, let's challenge your thought process. Go home and talk to your family. But it was more of a, sit down like, why are you voting? Okay, let's talk about it. And it kind of taught you how to have a conversation. Let's talk about more things that are in common and then that are not in common. And right now, it's not that type of conversation. It's more of a lack of fact conversation, and then again dealing with the emotions. So if you give people the emotions and not the facts, you tend to.
Yeah, I just feel that now more than ever people are acting on emotions, and people like Donald Trump know how to play with that.
That's right.
And he knows how to get people's attention. He knows how to get people scared. He knows how to do this and that, and he's just playing with people now.
Right.
People get scared of this, so they turn over here. And I just feel that we need to stop just acting on our emotions and think more broadly and have a more open-mindedness.
Critical thinking is very, when we think of, so did everybody see, did you guys watch the awards last night?
Yeah.
And did you see Spike Lee's acceptance speech? And how did you feel, when you heard the speech, how did you feel about his speech? Did you feel that it was, what did he say?
He might for a Black Klansman.
Black Klansman. But in his speech, did you think it was, his speech was negative? Did you think his speech was negative?
Well, actually, you think there was a whole commotion.
I don't think it was negative. I just think he was expressing himself. So it depends on how you view it. For me, it's expressing his truth. But for some else who hasn't been through that or doesn't have to say the truth as him or see it as being disrespectful, like negative. But I didn't see it that way.
Perception.
Yeah, perception. Did anybody else see the speech or have any thoughts on it? You ever have a grandmother who said, if it's not you, don't say ouch? It's that simple. If it's not you, it's not you. But here's something. He took his speech. He went from how his grandmother, she went to Spelman, saved up, paid his way through Morehouse and a film school in New York, paid for that. And as a reflection, he's always mindful of that and how to give back. 2020 is coming. Make sure y'all vote out of love and vote for a place of love, not hate. I'm going to say nobody's name except my grandmother's, didn't even say her name. And you get a tweet from Alito, the free world, who says, stop promoting hate. Think about that. And if nobody took the time to listen to Spike Lee's acceptance speech, but then they're only reading this tweet, they only have this narrow point of reference, and they're like, see, he's doing this, and that's the thing, is that we're not seeking facts, we're just being responsive and emotional, and that's a very, very bad place.
No, I don't think that's true because it's one my dad, he didn't watch the Oscars last night. But this morning he was saying like, oh, he heard Spike Lee was saying crazy things at the award show. I'm like, did you know? Like, you didn't watch it. He's going on with the tweet. I'm like, that's not what happened. So
Right.
You're right. So it's true.
And just think about that. You're right here, and wow, we're here. We used to play a game called what's the game? Like I would start right telephone, and it was a lesson. Telephone. We start right here, and how the story would end up down here. But now, just think how how serious that is. And I go back to Heather Howard, that young lady lost her life because of emotions, and it's really, really serious. So, speaking from a place of love, and when people don't have facts and they're willing to run off of facts, people have lost their lives for that. That's a very serious thing. So for me, again, everybody's here. You have a mom because you're here, So in terms of diplomacy and how women do things and everything, to think America is supposed to be the leader. We always say that we're the leader, we're the, everything, but how many countries have had women in leadership? And we still, so if you do this list of how many countries who, quote unquote, that will say that they're third world country that have had women in leadership, and we still can't get past having a woman in leadership. And it's not, the reasons are not too different from what Charlotte Chisholm is doing, so.
Let me maybe have you all think about the documentary and what we've heard thus far. Since you're most of your film students, what do you think about how the story was told in this documentary and about Shirley Chisholm? Do you think that it was effective? Maybe we'll go around where everybody can comment about it. How effective do you think the process was in terms of getting out this message about how politics played itself out for her in the political process? Maybe we start up top maybe.
I'm going to be honest, it was pretty effective in terms of even with the narrative and such. It was so effective that every now and then I would almost be surprised because she was very passionate about what she was fighting for. So, again, not to just keep going and repeating stuff, but yeah, it was pretty effective in terms of shooting narrative and such.
And maybe I'm going to push you all a little bit because what I like to do. And that is that, so that means that nobody can repeat what he said, right? You each have the responsibility of taking a slightly different direction.
I believed everything because it was right there in front of me. There was proof, there was videos, with my own eyes I could see it compared to somebody telling me. That would change my perspective. And here, the presentation, because it was visual, it was like you said, it was powerful because we saw it, so we can believe it. It was just not narrative, it was narrative through real life scenarios, things that actually happened to where they concluded to, from one step to another, from one right to the other. So that's how I believe in history of it.
Come back. That's gonna be hard. You're gonna be the last person.
You thought it was hard before.
To be honest, I probably rather not say because this dealt with her with the election. I know her when you seen this book.
Say something.
And people. And I could get paperwork in the city some. And here they came to visit her when she was Congresswoman in Brooklyn. And it's not what people think. That didn't deal with her in the office, it dealt with her running election, so you never get to find out anything about it. And I really don't want to spoil what people actually seen here compared to what's in the book. The film is made a certain way to give you a certain presentation, but that's not necessarily somebody that has the history down to her, which may be a little bit different. So I would just tell you to get this book, and it's one of the best books I ever read.
Compare numbers basically.
Yeah, I think that's powerful because, also oftentimes it's important to think about that there's no, as a professor I always say there's no one book can tell a complete story, right? So if we take this video as a book or as a story about a person's life. This is a snapshot. It's like looking each one of those little holes in the bricks over the way it's designed. If you look through each one of them and you're looking at the same thing, each one's going, if you can only see through that one hole, it's only going to give you a particular narrative. And that's why it's interesting if you think about the bumblebee or something there, because they have so many eyes that they can see through simultaneously. And if we could see the composite image like they see it, it'd be very different. So I think that's
And what it really is, that it shows you how TV, movies, and films, like he was saying, he believed because he's seen it there. But there's a story behind every TV, movie, and film that most of us don't dig down to see, is this actually true or what they would present, whatever it is to you. You know, I was going to read this, but I just said, no, I love you, it's funny, and I just couldn't do it.
Well, I want to hear everybody, but I'm going to come back and respond to that. Okay.
I think what he just brought up changed my mind a little bit.
Okay.
No, it's okay. That's part of the process.
That it's always important to figure out where you're getting your information from and who's telling the story, because depending on who's telling the same story, it comes from two different people, two different stories. And one person may feel one way, the other person another. And there's facts on both sides, but you'll never get to really see it. But I feel like this film did a good job at kind of taking her issues and making it bigger and more impactful, that the film lasts a long time and people can see this in 2019 and still relate to it and still look back on it as information and ways to, improve now. It has longevity to it.
Oh yeah, love the story of this thing. I'm a fan of Shirley Chisholm. I read about Shirley, so it's the first time I've seen this. I think the directors and the editors, they really put it together in a way where it's easy to follow, but you still got like a lot of information like on her and like U.S. politics. I thought it was well done. Like,
I like it too, and one thing that I noticed is that it showed one example of a strong woman, strong black woman. Because I was watching a documentary by Hillary Clinton. I don't know what it's called, but it was about her running, and it kept showing her as like a victim in a way, like what she went through. But for this one, it was more, it really showed her as a victim. Like, she spoke about almost getting stabbed on top, but that was like it. And I'm pretty sure she's been through so many more things than that, but that's why we loved about it as well. It showed her more as a powerful person.
I think this was a very, like I hope we touched documentary. I didn't even know she existed. Like they don't teach, some things they don't teach you in school, and it made me even search her up where, and I feel like this needs to be taught, they need to be shown in schools. Because I went to schools that were very prominent on like black culture, so I'm surprised I didn't heard of it.
What time did you grow up?
East Orange. But I went to school in like North and East Orange. And I feel like this needs to be shown more, like everything's not as good. Like she said, it didn't show her as being like a victim. It just made a point of, this is who she is, this is what she did, and this is how everything happened. And I really feel like people need to see this more. Where I said I didn't know she existed, but now I'm looking up on my phone and like learning some things about her. It's like, I don't know she is a person.
I've seen this film before, and I love it. Obviously, because the content, but also just the approach. And it was so funny because we were supposed to talk about Sam Pollard's, who edited this. He's Spike Lee's. He's worked with Spike Lee in a number of different films over the years, and is a director and producer in his own right. So, and then you reminded me, we're showing this today, so it was perfect timing. But I think it's just apropos with all the women entering politics. So it's good, especially for y'all to know who came before the Ocasios and the Kamala Harris and the Clintons and all of that. And I think it's interesting too because it's not just voting for a woman because she's a woman, because not all women are for all women. But I think that's what was interesting about Chisholm, that she really, she really embodied a lot of populist causes, she was for working people, she was for women's rights, she was for civil rights, and not in a way that, just kind of saying it. So, so I think it's an interesting film to watch at this time, thinking of her, so. See the best for last.
I've been taken at once. I wasn't prepared to talk. I really appreciate this film, like her, speaking her beliefs, fighting for it, not just like two different rights at once for rights for women and for African Americans. It's like there's a lot on our shoulders right now. I really respect that.
So we have about, 4 or 5 minutes, I'm mostly on your class. Yeah.
So I'm gonna respond, I just wrote down, and passionate. She was very passionate, but being a woman of Caribbean background, spoke to history. Let me say, I think she's from Barbados family.
Or Barbados and Guyana.
Barbados and Guyana. So when I took my course here in African American history, Dr. Gunther had us do our final verbal. And it was an older woman, and us literally a senior citizen in our class, and she did her, and she was Jamaican, and she did her speech on Marcus Garvey. And when she did that speech on Marcus Garvey, that was nothing a book ever taught her. Nothing came out of you, it wasn't from a book. That was what she knew, what she grew up in, and it was in her. And I say that to say that I think that one of the things I believe that was beneficial for Shirley, I think that she had been brought up a different way, especially back in the 70s in terms of, you think they weren't teaching history now in class. You can imagine how it was in the 70s. And so I think that her basis for learning was so much different. So when you know who you are, you can kind of approach things different. So it was passionate, but she also knew, from a historical point, who she was. You said, no third party heard. And I want the journalism today, how it moved. You think of this news cycle and those who we need to tell our stories, and you get up in the morning and you want to watch this. Oh my gosh, it's just a lack of so much information. It's just so, and as filmmakers, I think that one of the most, when you think out the YouTubes and Netflix, and you're not relegated to 247, 9/11, that the stories are coming out a lot more pure off the main beaten path. So I think, and you can do it, who's the news thing that does the news on the phone? It comes on Channel 9. Their whole thing was they do it, Chasing New Jersey. If anybody's paying attention to that, that was just think that they do the news with their iPhones and cell phones. They get chasing. Yeah, so pay attention. I mean, it's evolved, but if you go back to the earlier Chasing New Jerseys, it was done with the cell phone. Compare notes. You said, knowing and reading books, and you have some, more information and everything. That's cool, but the job as a filmmaker is to tell a story of what you want people to see. So I think that is the biggest thing, is that always don't accept the first thing in front of you. Make sure that you are comparing notes. Change your mind. Okay, so that's good. She's challenging your thought. I do like that you were, and just think that in the sense of what's going on today, that we as a community, and we are a global community, that we opened our mind to different thoughts. That if we heard this, I'm like, oh, that's not, maybe in 1492 Columbus didn't sail ocean, but let's talk about it. Let's have it and see what, happens. So I think that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, and have a basis of information and conversation involved. And trust me, the way you feel at 18, you're not going to feel at 28, because we're creatures of the fan charlatanism, and so so much there, so, I feel that too, and I'm glad that you got to see the film, but keep doing the research, and, tomorrow you have, in the 34th, with your Assemblywoman, Brittany Timberlake, she is actually doing an awards in the spirit of Assemblywoman Timberlake. Lieutenant Governor did too, but as for women, we stand on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm. So keep doing research, get the book, and try to, because we're not perfect creatures. So, we're doing what we have to do and move forward and how we can do it. Strong Black woman, yes. And mom, and I say especially our mothers, grandmothers, and what they have to do and how you can take that and bring it into this format, like what I did to raise my babies. And, has anybody seen the movie Secretariat? I'm a fan of the arts, and so I can always give you a movie. But there was a Secretariat, look at, but her father raised racehorses, died, she had to come in and take over, and then and the guy, and this was a Triple Crown winner, just came out of, and she was a housewife, and one of the things she said in the movie, yes, I'm doing what housewives do every day, managing, and it was that simple. So it's strong women, sometimes, especially coming out of that era, just think you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't have a credit card, these things that were really, really superficial, that they were changing people's lives or based on to hold people back. So again, think about local law and things like that. You, your husband, whatever, you couldn't think about that. That's just was bananas, but that's how it was. People, you couldn't buy houses, and this is, not too long ago. And you didn't know Shirley Chisholm. And what year did you graduate? No.
Oh,
yeah. No. What year did you graduate high school? 2017. So what I would ask you all to, is everybody familiar with the Amistad legislation? Everybody? Okay. So, and as filmmakers and journalists, and y'all have your stylists and everything, write down, because Amistad legislation is something that you should listen to, look up. That's something Congressman Payne's uncle, when he was assemblyman, did legislation to say that we really almost need to correct the way history is taught and go back and put the contribution of African Americans into everywhere that it's supposed to be instead of, and just the things.
Some schools are trying to change that.
Yeah, they do have.
They're taking things out of the book saying that slavery was
right
in the southern states, and I'm like, I was like a teacher, and they teach me.
Well, look up, but the whole curriculum's online, and I'm sure. Yeah. No, she opened it. Yeah, no, yeah, she's opened it. And if they do a teaching, if you will, in July at King College. So really, and again, filmmakers, this is, if you call Stephanie, she's a director, Stephanie James Wilson, and said, we would like to do some, watch and just, interview you, whatever, she would love you to do that. So because as Lieutenant Governor said, each one teach one, so you tell a story, it goes out there, and we can say, why is Amistad legislation important? Here I graduated 27, I didn't know. And trust me, by design, they don't want you to know these different things. It was not even 5 years ago when Texas tried to put out books, books come out, textbooks come out primarily out of Texas, and they wanted to say that black people came over from Africa looking for jobs as an indentured service, so they wanted to change the whole narrative of slavery. So, think about it. So sometimes things like that are by design. And so, and you were talking about Sam Pollard came out, and when you said that, I just think how these things are allowed to repeat themselves, because we're not learning from history. And not that history necessarily repeats itself, but we're not taking the lessons and moving forward. But I would ask you, like I said, Google the Amistad Convention, but also just Google the words unbought and unbossed. Just say unbought and just see what you come up with that, and see how much that is attached to Shirley Chisholm, and how brilliant of a campaign slogan that was. Nobody's buying me, and nobody's bossing me around. And it was really simple out there. So, and just see what comes off of that. But I think also about policy, because now you said you're working from a global, this is when we learn every day. We're not learning to teach in just Orange, East Orange, and North. We're dealing with a true global community, and we have to be able to almost talk and think and articulate on that level. At the beginning, you've seen the 13 original founders of the Congressional Black Caucus. And it was a gentleman with white hair, and it was Congressman Ron Dellums. Did you remember seeing him? Well, Congressman Ron Dellums, Shirley Chisholm, they're the founders of the Congressional Black Caucus, 13 original. But he left Congress, retired. He was a mayor. Oakland came to Congress. They had problems in Oakland. So he went back to being mayor, but that's because he was a person who served. And, so that servant spirit, there's a difference when you have people who are doing it. It's fine. There's so much, but I think this is really serving you from an elected position. And I said to you in the beginning, I work for you. And as a resident of Orange, I work for you. You call me and say, Don, this is the problem and everything. You're my boss, and that's what I have to do. And I have to realize I have to help you understand that, because a lot of times people the relationship is not quite characterized that, but that's the simplicity of my job. People, one by one, have checked off that I'm elected to come serve you, and I have to remember that at the end of the day, I serve you. And what does that mean? Whether you need me to help you in the capacity of finding a, apartment, to getting the dogs running around the neighborhood loose, or maybe you have an idea about a community center. It's that and all of the above. And sometimes we don't know that. And I'll say in closing, I worked really with the Corzine legislation when Corzine was running for governor. And just remember walking around and how uninformed we are as a community of what we should be asking of our governor, what we should be asking of our senators, and what we should be asking of our local elected officials. That when you don't know that, oftentimes you're doing yourself a disservice, because people really get frustrated. And you know what, number one thing that people say when they call me, Ms. Williams, I don't want to bother you, but no, you are to bother me. And don't feel some type of way about doing that, because if you don't open your mouth, Orange has, census says 30,000 people. We probably have like 50,000. But if you don't call me, I'm never going to see all of the needs of 30,000 people, because I don't have eyes on me. I only have eyes on time. So do that and hold your elected official accountable, because that's how we help our communities be better.